Welcome back. If you've been following this series, then you're ready for a major shift in how you understand Bible prophecy. Today, we're diving into a prophecy that is so precise, so powerful, that it points directly to Jesus as the promised Messiah. And yet, it's one of the most misinterpreted passages in all of Scripture. What if one of the most debated end times prophecies is actually not about the Antichrist, but about the cross of Jesus Christ? Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 to 27 talks about the 70 weeks prophecy. It is not just a timeline of the end times, but a timeline of redemption. Let's break it down. "70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, until Messiah, the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. Then, after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the Prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end, there will be war. Desolations are determined. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate. Even until the complete destruction, one that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate." Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 to 27. Here is the purpose of the prophecy. God gives Daniel insight into how his redemptive plan will unfold, specifically concerning Israel, Jerusalem, and the coming Messiah. What are the 70 weeks? In Hebrew, the word shabuim means sevens. So, the 70 weeks refer to 70 sets of 7 years, a total of 490 years. This isn't literal weeks. It's symbolic language for a prophetic timeline of years, just like in Leviticus chapter 25 verse 8 and Genesis chapter 29 verse 27. To understand this part more clearly, let's break down the 70 weeks. We'll divide Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 to 27 into 3 segments. First segment, 7 weeks or 49 years. This begins with the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. You'll find that moment in Nehemiah 2, around 445 BC. That period covers the restoration of the city and the temple, the physical rebuilding of Jerusalem from its ruins, a critical foundation for what's coming next. Now, once the city is rebuilt, something bigger is set in motion. Second segment, 62 weeks or 434 years. This stretches from the completion of the rebuilding all the way to the arrival of Messiah, the Prince. That gives us a total of 483 years. And guess what? That timeline leads right to the start of Jesus' public ministry and his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. But then, the prophecy takes a heartbreaking turn. After the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. Daniel 9:26. That's a direct reference to the crucifixion of Jesus. The phrase "cut off" is powerful. It's covenant language pointing to a sacrificial death. And here's the beautiful truth. He wasn't cut off for his own sin. He died for ours. As Isaiah 53:8 puts it, he was cut off from the land of the living for the transgression of my people. Now, before we jump into timelines and numbers, let's first zoom in on the purpose of the 70 weeks. Because without knowing why it was given, we might totally miss the point. Let's break it down verse by verse. Daniel chapter 9 verse 24. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city. Okay, pause right there. This verse is laying out the entire mission of the 70 weeks. And it's not vague. Daniel lists 6 specific things that must be accomplished: to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, to anoint the most holy place. Now here's where it gets powerful. Every single one of those was fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Let's connect the dots. Dot number 1. On the cross, Jesus ended sin and made atonement once and for all. You may read that in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 26. Dot number 2. He brought in everlasting righteousness, not by law, but by grace, according to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21. Dot number 3. He fulfilled the prophecies, Luke chapter 24, verse 44, showing that every shadow in the Old Testament pointed to him. Dot number 4. He anointed the true holy place, not a building made by hands, but his own body. John chapter 2, verse 19 to 21. The real temple of God. So here's what this reveals. The 70 weeks prophecy wasn't about the end of the world. It was about the coming of Christ and his finished work on the cross. And that changes everything. All right, now that we've seen why the 70 weeks were given, the next big question is Daniel 9:25. When does it all begin? Let's read it. From the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince. There you go. That's our starting point. The clock starts ticking with a decree to rebuild Jerusalem. And out of all the historical options, the best candidate is the one issued by King Artaxerxes in 457 BC. You'll find that in Ezra 7. Now, here's where the math gets exciting. From 457 BC, count 69 weeks. That's 7 plus 62 weeks, or 483 years. And that lands us right around AD 27, which is exactly when Jesus began his public ministry. Let's break that down. The first 7 weeks, or 49 years, cover the rebuilding of Jerusalem, just like the prophecy said. Then, the next 62 weeks, another 434 years, carry us right up to the arrival of Jesus, the Messiah. This wasn't a rough estimate. It was fulfilled down to the year, because when God sets a timeline, he doesn't miss. Now let's move to a very heavy moment in the prophecy. Daniel chapter 9, verse 26. The Messiah will be cut off. It says, then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. Let's pause right there. This is a direct prophecy of Jesus' crucifixion. No question about it. That phrase, cut off, isn't random. It's a Hebrew idiom for a violent death, often used for someone who's executed. You'll find the same language in Isaiah chapter 53, verse 8. He was cut off from the land of the living. And what about the part that says, and have nothing? That points to how Jesus was betrayed, abandoned by his own people, stripped of everything, and yet he willingly laid down his life. He didn't fight it, he fulfilled it. But the verse doesn't stop there. It also says, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now this part trips a lot of people up. But here's the key. This isn't about some future Antichrist. It's talking about Rome. In AD 70, the Roman army came in, destroyed Jerusalem, and leveled the temple. Just like Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24, verse 2. Not one stone will be left upon another. So yes, this verse covers both the cross and the coming judgment, and it all happened exactly as prophesied. All right, now we've arrived at the most talked about part of this prophecy, Daniel, chapter 9, verse 27, the final 70th week. It begins with this, and he will confirm a covenant with the many for 1 week. Now let's slow that down, because who is he? A lot of people assume this is the Antichrist. But when you follow the flow of the passage, he is Jesus. He's the one who confirms the new covenant, just like he said in Matthew chapter 26, verse 28, and again in Hebrews chapter 8, verse 6. This isn't a deception. It's the fulfillment of God's promise. And what does "with the many" mean? That's Old Testament language for God's people. You'll see it clearly in Isaiah chapter 53, verses 11 to 12. So again, this fits Jesus, not some future world ruler. Now check this out. In the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice. That's exactly what Jesus did at the cross. His ministry lasted 3.5 years, and in the middle of that final 7-year period, he offered himself as the once-for-all sacrifice. As Hebrews chapter 10, verse 14 says, "By one offering he has perfected for all time those who are sanctified." In other words, no more need for temple sacrifices. He fulfilled them all. So, what about the second half of that week? After his resurrection, the gospel kept going to Israel first. That's what we see in Acts chapters 1 to 7. Then, in Acts chapter 8, the gospel explodes to the Gentiles, just as Jesus said it would. And within one generation, just 40 years later, Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed in AD 70, completing the warning and the fulfillment. So what does all this mean? The 70th week wasn't postponed. It wasn't kicked into some distant future. It was fulfilled, completely and perfectly, in Jesus Christ. No gaps, no rapture, just Jesus. Now here's where a lot of confusion comes in, especially from dispensational theology. It teaches that after the 69th week, God hit pause and inserted a 2,000-year gap before the 70th week even begins. But here's the thing. That idea isn't in the text at all. Let's be honest for a second. There's no scriptural reason to insert a gap. There's no precedent in Jewish prophecy for a time skip like that. And most importantly, this prophecy is all about Christ, not some future Antichrist. The 70 weeks were given to point us to the first coming of Jesus, his death, his resurrection, and the judgment on Jerusalem that followed. And when we keep the focus right there, on Jesus and his finished work, everything lines up perfectly. No gaps, no delay, just Jesus, right on time. Now let's step back for a second and ask, what does all of this really change? This is the part that flips the whole narrative. The center of prophecy is not modern-day Israel. It's not the Antichrist. It's not some distant future tribulation. The center of it all is Jesus Christ. The 70 weeks weren't about building fear. They were about revealing him, and they're fulfilled in his first coming, God stepping into history. His new covenant, not of law but of grace, his crucifixion, the Lamb slain for our sins, his resurrection, the victory over death and the birth of the church, his body on earth, spreading the gospel to all nations. So when we read Daniel 9 through the lens of Christ, everything falls into place. It's not about delay. It's about deliverance. Not about a future fear, but a finished work. So what should all of this do for us? It should lead us to deeper worship. It should remind us that our hope isn't found in timelines or speculation, but in Jesus himself. And it should protect us from getting pulled into interpretations that shift our focus away from the cross. In the next episode, Part 5b, we're going to take everything we just unpacked and lay it side by side with the book of Revelation. We'll look at the seals, the trumpets, the bowls, the rise of the Antichrist, and how it all leads to the second coming and the resurrection. You don't want to miss it. So, if this helped you, like, comment, and share to keep the word moving. And above all, keep your eyes on Jesus, not the chaos.